everyone. Those who don't know me, my name is Sean Panko. I'm the mayor of Smiths Falls. I'm joined by Councillor Peter McKenna, who we're very blessed to have him as part of this task force, as well as our Deputy Clerk, Nadine Bennett, and Brianne Harper, who will be here to provide administrative support as well. There's a few formal things we tend to go through with all of our meetings. I'll ask for any amendments to the agenda. Everyone has received the agenda. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to review it. If there's anything you'd like to add, feel free to do so. But we're working, this is sort of an exploration to start with. And then as we move through this process, I'm sure we'll be refining agendas as we go. I'll ask for disclosure of monetary interest. That's a formal thing we need to do. And I don't anticipate anyone has one today, but we do that. There are no adoption of minutes, as we've not had a meeting before. No delegations at this meeting, no correspondence items. So we'll move right to priority issues. And the first thing I'd like to do is simply go around the room, so to speak, give everyone an opportunity to introduce yourselves. And I'd like you to talk a little bit, take a few minutes if you like, to articulate why you believe this task force is important and why you decided you would like to be part of it. So I'm just going to go based on how my screen is. I'm going to start with my top right. So Janelle, you get to go first.
Hey, hi everyone. I am Janelle. I manage the Starbucks in Smith Falls, and Smith Falls is home for me. So I am very excited to be back home in this area, and just the opportunity to be a part of this task force, because so much has changed over the last little bit. And I have felt, being back home, that Smith Falls is a completely diverse place. It's really developed in the last few years. And I think that now there is, with the younger generation especially, some time to be very influential and just lead change that it needs to happen. So I think just being a part of that is huge, and the importance in small communities too. So I've done a lot of work in Toronto with different nationalities, cultures, religions. And I think that it is still so important in our small towns to really have that behavior taught as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Jacob.
Sorry, I had trouble unmuting there. I'm the guidance counselor at Smiths Falls District Collegiate. I recently, in March, moved to the Smiths Falls area from Brockville. So I thought it was really important to engage not only as a new member of the community, but as someone who works with the youth on a daily basis at the high school. I've lived in both small towns and big cities in Ontario and overseas, and have visited and interacted with youth in a number of communities around the world, and seen a number of different not situations, but just ways people live and identify with each other. And I believe Smiths Falls is in a wonderful time right now and ready for a cultural and perhaps population boom. And I think to get the structures of these things set and the education to the community and making sure we're on a positive foot moving forward, I think is important. So I thought it was important to be a part of the committee.
Great, we look forward to your participation. Thank you. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you very much. Just Sean, I just wonder if we could be informal and just refer to you as Sean and me as Peter, and if that's okay.
I'm perfectly fine with that, sure.
I know you would be, thank you. So I retired a couple of years ago, and I ran for municipal politics in my hometown, and was fortunate enough to be elected. But before that, I spent about 30 years working in healthcare and in a community health center model. For those of you who aren't familiar, they're very urban mostly, but there's a number of rural ones across Ontario, and they're owned and operated by the community, and they are as diverse as the community they serve. So they adapt their programs and services to the community that they're working in. So for 30 years, I've worked with my colleagues across Ontario, about 100 of us, in very diverse settings. So we specialized in providing services to new Canadians, second, third generation Canadians. There are some CHCs that just serve the Black community. There are some that just serve women who've emigrated to Canada. There are some that serve Eastern European, LGBTQ. So it's a very diverse model. And over the years, I have absorbed as much as I can and have taken some anti-racism training, and actually quite a bit, and had my eyes continue to be open about how I can be, now as a municipal politician and as a leader in the community, how I can support my community as a white man, privileged, English speaking, straight white man, how I can, what is my role in participating in anti-racism? How can I be a participant and advance this conversation? So it's personal and professional, and trying to always work at this. There's a lot of work to do. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Peter. And I apologize. I'm gonna mess up your name. I'm sure. Prajit.
Oh, great. Yeah, no, I figured that was coming. So everyone can call me Bip. I'm the head of lab over at Dow Testing Services. I'm a recent migrant to Smiths Falls. I came from Toronto, and so throughout my life, I've been in a scientific research setting, and through school, through growing up, through my community, I've always been in a diverse surroundings. So I guess I'm a bit more I have a more deeper understanding of varying cultures, and this was a unique opportunity for me because me being a recent migrant here in Smiths Falls, and noticing the increase in population and people moving in, and you're starting to see the community itself becoming more diverse than even when I was here 2 years ago. So obviously in an organization like this, like in a committee like this, I guess it's important to have as many voices as possible, and I'm honored to be one of those voices, and that's what brings me here.
Wonderful, thank you, Bip. Chris, welcome.
Hi, my name is Chris, and I am a woman who's culturally different. I've had the honor of living out 2 First Nations Indigenous teachings, so I honor that we're on unceded Algonquin territory. I'm also a supporter of women and children, and especially walk with missing and murdered Indigenous women. I grew up in Toronto, and I've been living out a path of reconciliation through this community and before for about 11 years. And I also really have been a community builder when I was not retired in my lifetime, working to try to improve. In the year 2000, I was part of 50,000 women that went to Ottawa, but it was called the World Women's March. And we all came together of all nations and all traditions to end violence, poverty, and racism. And actually, we had some kind-hearted men with us. So this is a committee that's very, very important for me. I believe that we were meant to have equity and inclusion. If you could see me in person, you would see me walking with a walking stick. So I also live with issues of disability. But for me, it's for the generations to come, as well as now to hopefully continue to improve the community. And sadly, we have dealt with a small number of issues that were visible in racism, especially in Smiths Falls, and a number of us in the community do not want to ever see that reoccur. So that is why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Great to have you part of the team.
Thank you.
Az, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kaz Bam. I am a Smiths Falls local for many, 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 many years. I was raised in Smiths Falls. I left when I was about 18 years old, I guess I was. And I actually worked for Scotiabank in town here at the time. When I left, it was to actually further my education and career. I spent about 15, almost 20 years in finance, working between Toronto, Calgary, Bay Street, energy sector, as an investment banker, financier, and so on. My family was in business for over 40 years here in Smiths Falls, small business. My father and I my mother, father, and I, excuse me, for many years owned a number of shops in what used to be the County Fair Mall and is now called the Settlers Ridge Mall, I believe. Most recently, I was employed with the Canopy Growth Corp as the Director of International Development, handling all international expansion projects, partnerships, development, and so on. Unfortunately, their flavors have changed tune, and now I am currently unemployed, somewhat working from home, doing my own thing, day trading, but looking forward, excuse me, to working with the committee here, having shared, or hearing the stories, excuse me, that were shared, the experiences locally, leaving and coming back, and or just recently arriving. I feel that I can add a little bit of understanding, I guess, to the way things used to be and the way things need to move in the future. Having lived in large cities, small towns, and dealing with both large and small towns, large cities, excuse me, and small towns across the world, the culture shock when I come home is sometimes a bit astounding. And I think that a task force like this is exactly what the town needs to really start to push things forward. I apologize, I don't remember who had mentioned it earlier, but looking forward and looking to the future of the development and expansion of the town and population growth and population boom that, without a doubt is coming in the next 3 to 5 years. I think that this is a top priority to get something in place to help manage and support new individuals coming into our community.
Great, thank Kaz. Thank you. Michelle.
Hi, thanks so much, Sean. I can put my camera on. I live in rural Lanark now and competing with myself for bandwidth every single day. So it's either have my camera off or hear everybody sound like from Star Wars. So I'm going to opt for hearing you all appropriately. So thanks so much. So for 25 years of my career, I actually lived, worked and played in Northern Ontario in a small rural community that had a 50% Indigenous Inuit population. And for me, coming from Newfoundland, that was really, for me, a culture shock. So as you talk about a shock when you come home, I went from Newfoundland to a rural Northern Ontario community. And I very quickly realized the where it was conscious or unconscious racism that I saw and witnessed for myself. It saddened me greatly. I do remember enabling a smudge ceremony for a dying elder in our intensive care unit and being severely reprimanded for enabling the elders to come in and perform the smudging ceremony. That resonated with me and has stayed with me for 30 years of my life. It's been pretty amazing, actually. And now I currently work at Rideau Community Health Services, and we have a community health center in Smiths Falls. And as everybody has said, the community is growing. You can see the diversity in the community itself. But I think there is work to do no matter where you work. There is work that needs to be done on anti-racism and anti-oppression. And at Rideau Community Health Services, we've actually engaged in this work ourselves in the last year and have been working with a fantastic group out of Ottawa, facilitating our education and our training. And it's been so wonderful to participate in some of the online cultural sensitivity training that's been available, and to be able to be part of something that's new and innovative and creative. And the CHCs are known to be inclusive, but there's so much work that we still have to do. And that's the part that we have to acknowledge. No matter how much we all think that we're forward facing and forward thinking, there's always work that we have to do. And Peter, I resonate with you as a white female. I do feel quite privileged, and I often am challenged to be able to speak about this and to be part of these working groups. However, I am happy to be part of the group and to be able to participate. Thank you.
Michelle, thank you. And Charlene.
Good morning, everybody. My apologies for being late this morning. I had a work call I just got off of. So Charlene Catchpole, and I was born and raised in Smiths Falls. I am a First Nations woman of Ojibwe descent. My reserve is in Northern Ontario, Fort Frances, and was born and raised in Smiths Falls, left for just over 25 years to go away to school, and made my home in Toronto, and returned to Smiths Falls about 6 years ago, I think this fall now, because my two adopted kids wanted to be closer to my mom, who is still here in Smiths Falls. And I, growing up in Smiths Falls as a young First Nations woman, I experienced racism from a very novelty standpoint, if you will. Unlike my brother, who experienced racism from a much more difficult stance on sports teams and in schools and that sort of thing. So I have to say kudos to council and to Mayor Panko and to the councillors present today. I think that this is, I think we're in a space in society today where we can be speaking out about this. I think that the racial equity in Smiths Falls is changing dramatically. I know that I have a friend who's moved from Toronto and is currently looking at buying a house and is living with me, and she's a Black woman living in town. And whenever we go out, we certainly see the effects of racism quite plainly in town. I currently am employed with the Leeds and Grenville Interval House, located in Brockville. I'm the executive director there. And so I'm well versed in different types of oppression, both racial, as a woman, poverty, and dealing with all those issues within our community. And I'm just thrilled to be here and thrilled to see what as a committee we can do for the better of this community, that I want to see my kids not have to deal with any overt or covert types of racism as they continue to grow in this community and make it home as I have. So thank you very much. And I apologize again for being late.
No worries, Charlene. Thank you very much. I don't think Raven has joined us, so I'll go last. Born and raised in Smiths Falls and an area, left for over 20 years. I think I come back in 2000 to open my financial planning practice and enjoy the community. I've always loved the town. In 2010, I really sensed the town was going through some real struggles. I don't think that I sensed that. It was pretty profound at the time after the closure of Hershey's and Regional, a number of other places. And I wanted to be part of the, solution. I thought we needed some new voices and different vision going forward. So I ran for town council in 2010, was fortunate enough to be successful. I served 4 years as a member of council. And in 2014, Mayor Staples had retired. The mayor seat was sort of up for grabs, and I was initially very reluctant to make that step, understanding at the time I had 3 young kids at home and 4 older kids who were in school or out of school or on their way to elsewhere, plus a business to manage. But I really felt that the community was poised for some real opportunity and change. I wanted to be part of that. So I ran for mayor in 2014. I was fortunate enough to be elected. And in 2018, again, it was, I guess, somewhat uncertain if I wanted to continue with some of the other responsibilities of my life, but really felt I couldn't leave at a time when the town was going through some incredible transformation. And I thought we had some real opportunity to move this community forward in so many positive ways. Election night, to be honest, I was thrilled. I was thrilled, not necessarily to be reelected, I was thrilled because of the group of people I had a chance to work with during this 4-year term. Councillor McKenna, Peter, of course, being part of that. I've worked with different councils in the past, and I would have to say this council is the one which I think is the most forward-thinking, the most visionary, and I think the most concerned about the welfare of everybody in our town. And I think we have an opportunity to do things that probably we would not have done in previous terms. So going back about a year ago, frankly, even though I think the issues of racism, discrimination have always been permeating through our community, I think I became far more aware of it as mayor. And I think probably simply because of the position that more and more people reach out to me when they ran out of other solutions and didn't know where to go. So I gained a better understanding, I think, of our community in my role as mayor. And going back a year ago, of course, following the George Floyd murder, following a number of incidents we've seen, not just in the US, but of course in Canada, and maybe not specifically in town. But to Chris's point earlier, there have been issues which had arisen in town from time to time. And I really came to the realization and conclusion that there's more we need to do. And we can't simply move ahead believing that everything will be okay if everyone is not okay. So last June, Council made a proclamation that we wanted to make sure we would be as inclusive as possible. We started doing some research into things like the Canadian Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities, the Canadian Coalition of Municipalities Against Racism and Discrimination, and we went through a process that led us to where we are today, to determine that we need to hear from the community. We need to gain some expert insight from the community. And like Peter, I'm a privileged white guy. I don't think I had any major barriers in my life that I had to deal with when it came to going away to school or starting a business or anything I've done. So I don't have the understanding that others who have felt that experience, or had that experience, have had to endure. And all of you are incredibly right. Smith Falls is really changing, and it's really heartwarming to see that change and to see our community evolve and grow and become more diverse. Our Pride event in 2018 was probably one of my proudest moments as mayor. It was absolutely incredible, and I know that many of you were there. And I think it was the Tweed crew, Kaz, that really brought so much energy and excitement, and that day was nothing but pure euphoria. And I think it really helped us understand that our community is changing. And I recall hearing from one individual who was a little scared to be marching. He grew up here, he's a gay man, and he was concerned that he may be facing eggs or other things thrown at him as I'm part of the parade route. But none of that happened. It was a really wonderful experience. And I think it really helped demonstrate that our community is going through great transformation and change. We're becoming more inclusive, greater equality for everybody, but that doesn't mean that we are where we needed to be. And there are still barriers and still problems that we need to work through. And to all of your points, as newcomers come to our community, we want to make sure that they feel as welcome as possible and they can integrate just like anybody else or any of our people who came here 150 years ago from Ireland or at any point in time in our history. They maybe dealt with some challenges gets integrated into community, we want to make sure that those barriers don't exist any further in the future. So this is really an exploration. I can say today, I'm not sure where this task force is going to go. I don't know what the outcomes will be. We're sort of venturing on new ground for our community. We've seen other communities who have done this, but I think we need to explore this, be open. We want to seek, I think, feedback from other people in our community and try to move our community in the direction that all of us believe it needs to go. So with that, before we move any further, I'll ask if there's any questions at this point. Don't see any. So we have, as this is a task force, a committee of council, there's a few formal things that we need to overcome. And we're going to start with our terms of reference and the mandate of the committee. And my feeling is that we may be going back to council with recommendations that maybe want to make some changes to the terms of reference or mandate as well. So I think Dave's going to share the screen and we'll walk through terms of reference and including the mandate. I hope everyone's had a chance to review it. I believe Nadine has circulated all the material beforehand. So this may not be, hopefully it won't be a deep dive. It's simply going to be, hopefully Dave can make that bigger. I still got my glasses on. So, oh, there we go. Okay, maybe I hit my glasses off, Dave. Thanks. So, Dave, just scroll up. I'm not going to worry about the introduction. We'll go to the mandate. So, obviously, we want to understand local realities and develop a plan of action to foster inclusion, identify the barriers of opportunity in order to enhance the shared experience and opportunities afforded to racial minorities and those impacted by discrimination and prejudice. And the scope of this may evolve as well. So, and I think we need to determine as a task force how broad or how narrow we choose to go. And my sense is obviously broader is better, but we have people who are discriminated against based on disability, which limits their ability to fully participate in the community. We have a lot of people who are discriminated on based on poverty. And Smith Falls has a large number of people who are living with disability. We have 900 and some members of our population, about 10%, are relying on ODSP for their income. And if you're on ODSP, you've got a modest income and you're living with a disability. Those people have some real challenges in our community, especially with housing prices rising and food insecurity. But I think in my mind, we want to make sure that we are as inclusive as possible. Do we broaden the scope to include people who are discriminated against based on disability as well as income? We want to be able to provide and basically recommend actions on matters related to provision of anti-racism discrimination initiatives. And later on, we'll talk about the name of the task force because I'm not convinced we labeled it appropriately. And to make a recommendation to council regarding membership and commitment to the Canadian Coalition Against Racism and Discrimination, which has evolved into the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities. And of course, we want to be able to create trust, loyalty, and respect in the community by promoting greater equality and inclusion. Dave, can you scroll down, please? We'll skip the, okay, oh, there, okay. So again, this is an exploration. We will refine our work as we move forward, but obviously we want to work towards reduction, elimination of racism and discrimination. I was a little shocked last summer when someone advised me that there was someone putting posters on some of our telephone poles. And I'll take a moment, I've got it right here. And this was subsequent to the George Floyd. And I kept this. And it was taped to a pole across the post office by United Church. And this is a white supremacy poster. And as much as I'd hate to admit, there are people in our community who share those attitudes. Obviously, it's out there. So when it comes to reduction and elimination, I think education obviously is a incredibly important role. in trying to shape and change deeply rooted values and attitudes. So we've got a big task ahead of us. Identify the barriers for racial minorities and those impacted by discrimination. Develop and provide opportunities to address these barriers. Improve our practices for social inclusion. And social inclusion, of course, in my mind, refers to people who are discriminated by disability, potentially by poverty and those factors. And produce an action plan to report to council within 6 months. So we do have a bit of a timeline. We want to make sure that as we get towards the end of the year, we wrapped up and made our recommendations to council for what meaningful change we believe should happen. And that could include perhaps an ongoing committee that would continue to work on this as we move forward. Build partnerships, share resources. And it's great to have Michelle here from Community Health Services. There's an example of a great partnership of an organization in the community that really takes a lead on these issues. And inclusive of all community residents of all levels and abilities. So again, speaking to people who are discriminated by for a variety of reasons. Of course, engage stakeholders, businesses, and cultural organizations as partners in the delivery of initiatives. COVID will have some impact on our ability to engage the way we traditionally like to engage. Hopefully that evolves over the balance of the year and we have greater opportunities. So we can skip the composition. I think it probably speaks to, well, I guess we'll go on to, so the obligations and responsibilities really speaks to being a member of a committee of council, our procedural bylaw and code of conduct. So at that, I think we can put up the code of conduct. I assume everyone's had a chance to review this, but from our formality standpoint, we'll just touch on it to make sure that everyone is aware of your individual responsibilities. Dave, if you can scroll down, please, Dave. Okay. So the number of, a number of statutory provisions. So we can probably skip through that. Definitions, I think you probably reviewed those. Confidentiality is important. We are as a committee of council, we are, this is a public meeting. We are being recorded, will be aired publicly. Actually, I think it's live stream right now, if I'm not mistaken. But there may be times we have to go on camera. If as an example, there's reasons that we don't want something discussed in public and it meets the requirements of the Municipal Act, that may happen. If that's the case, confidentiality obviously is critically important. And if discussed in camera, is not discussed outside of that forum. Okay. And I guess it's kind of ironic that when you think of, go to number 9, treat each other in a respectful manner without abuse, bullying, harassment, or intimidation. I don't think have any concern that anyone here may act in those ways, especially when it comes to the purpose of this committee, and not use indecent, abusive, or insulting words or expressions towards any member of staff, and abide by the following principles. And really, it's a matter of continuing to act ethically, maintaining all integrity, accountability, and transparency. Abide by this code of conduct, of course. Understand that we will operate in an open forum that anyone can watch. We may have participation from the public at some point in time. That'll be up to the task force. And just conduct yourselves with proper decorum and professionalism of any committee or council. Dave, that's probably the gist. I don't think anything further that we need here, but a chance to review it. If you haven't already, please do so, but it's more of a formal part we need to look after. Okay, you can drop that, Dave. Any questions on any of those factors? Okay, so I want to move into.
Sean, hi, I just wanted to say two things, please. One was also that we have making sure that we're including cultural safety, that we include this, but also because I'm differently abled. The reason I haven't read it is because it's not accessible to me. So one of the things we have to do moving forward is to look at how we're going to disseminate information so that it's truly accessible for all members of the committee.
Thank you, Chris. Great
Thank
point.
you.
Peter?
Just on accountability and accountability to each other, I welcome the members of the task force to hold me accountable for words or expressions that I'm making. I will work very hard not to be consciously oppressive or too chauvinistic, or I'll do all of those things. But if I will hold each of you accountable and not challenge, but ask for explanations and understanding of what that means. And I welcome that from you as well. We will, I've done some training. I will continue to work at it. It's not your responsibility to flag things for me, but I welcome that at any opportunity. And I'm open to improving the way I express my views. And I will do the same with you if that's okay, without being a pain in the ass. Yeah.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, and to that point, I mean, as we evolve here, and especially those of us that come from a degree of white privilege, I think there's times that as we don't understand the things we need to understand. We may say things which are inappropriate, and to Peter's point, feel free to challenge and correct us. This is a journey for all of us. We all need to learn and grow. So I want to expand the discussion into inclusivity and equality, and get a good discussion going on what that means to each of you individually, and what do you think it means for our community. I believe that's the ultimate goal here, is that this community would be as inclusive and equal for everyone as possible. And getting there will be the challenge, and we will define that map as we move forward. But I'd like to open the discussion, trying to get again what it means to you individually, and what do you believe inclusivity and equality means for our community. So this, I will go by, I'll let look for a show of hand, look for a hand, I guess, to get the conversation started, but I hope everyone has a chance to weigh in. Kaz.
Got to remember to unmute first. So, you know, this task force or thinking about this task force and, you know, the equality aspect, equality and inclusion aspect of this task force, you know, to me is top priority. And I say that, you know, having been raised in Smiths Falls in this community, over the years, generally, you know, I'm thinking back to the 90s, I was, you know, 8, 9, 10, 12 years old, whatever it may have been at the time. You know, I think about some of the events or scenarios that occurred within myself, my family. You know, I played a lot of sports growing up, played a lot of soccer. And one of the things that, you know, always caught me off guard, I played on a lot of traveling teams. We travel from Smiths Falls to other communities. And, you know, some of the terminology I'm going to use, please bear with me. I do not mean it obviously in any negative context. However, you know, I would go to these other communities, and some of the other teams would have people of color in some regard, whatever their backgrounds may have been. And they would say to me, oh, look at this. They have a brown boy on the with all the white hillbillies. You know, racism, discrimination, it goes both ways, right? You know, I looked at these guys in Ottawa and I'd say to them, you know what? they're all people I grew up with. They don't care what color you are, you know. Whether it's someone coming into the community or just the vibes that we give out, you know, I'm starting with that as an example, because for me, that was a big eye opener for me. And, you know, as I started to develop in my career over the years, moved to Toronto, like I say, all these other countries and other cities and so on, I realized that racism isn't always tied to the small towns. Racism is everywhere. Discrimination is everywhere. And I think what I would like to focus on within this committee is not only improving Smiths Falls, but also showing that, you know, small towns can be where that ripple effect starts to roll out from, that we can sort of, I don't want to say spearhead, because I think that's a bit aggressive for a committee like this, but you know, we can really start to push forward, showing that the smaller communities can look beyond that. You know, again, for myself, you know, I think that the inclusion aspect should be first and foremost. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, what color your hair is, where you came from, what you've done. If you can add benefit to the community, fantastic. And that's really what I think should be first and foremost in anyone's mind. You know, I also think about, you know, jobs that I've received or have quote unquote earned over the years. And looking back, I question if it was literally just to tick a box, you know, of the inclusion box for that particular company or business or department, whatever it may have been. You know, and when it comes down to it, like I say, that inclusion aspect, I think, should be more prominent in my mind than necessarily going directly at the racism. Education is key. The more people understand both sides of that coin, I think people will, I think the racism aspect will sort of petter off or dribble off the more people understand and know and acknowledge.
Thank you, Kaz. Who would like to go next? Oh, yep.
Yeah, I was checking if that works, but
It's your hand up first.
yeah. So, I mean, like we're going over everyone's experiences. Like I've never faced, you know, discrimination or racism in the most, like in the more traditional sense, where I can put my finger on it. But I do know others who have. So, in terms of what does like the inclusivity and equality mean? I mean, it starts with like even before education, it's like a communication sort of thing. Like we have to all talk to each other and we have to be prepared to listen. And what I was saying was, so in terms of inclusivity and equality, like because of a lot of the cultural shifts that's happening even in the most recent years, a lot of people don't even know it's discriminatory anymore. So I feel like there has to be like an open communication. Like, you know, we got to be able to like hear these things, you know, like what's bothering people. And so it's listening to those around us. That's what essentially inclusivity and equality means to me there.
Thank you. Chris. Oh, Chris, you're on mute.
I have had the honor as
Three months on the board were in 2020, 2021. Sorry, Chris.
Thank you. I've had the honor of walking with missing and murdered Indigenous families, and I am an ally. I am a settler, and I do embrace, as I said, the honor of having 2 Indigenous teachings. And the one thing that I just would like to share, also being a woman who lives being differently abled as well, that the word intersectionality may be very important for those of us who come from settler backgrounds to learn about, because many of the issues in intersectionality actually cross over in so many ways. And I also know that because I've had the honor of walking a path of reconciliation, that learning the truth in a good way is very important to go forward. I have had the honor of never feeling that I was to be feeling guilty, just that I was to be in the respectful relationship that we were all meant to have. And I think earlier, Sean, you talked in the terms about the importance of respectfulness. And I think that this is part, in my opinion, as an ally, of the very important thing is, and between what I heard from Cass and Bib as well, about listening to each other and really hearing, right? Not just listening and not really taking it in. I think there will be a lot. That's why I brought up the word cultural safety. I think it's a crucial thing in order for us to have, in my opinion, please keep that in mind, it's only my opinion, the opportunity to kind of form a consensus and moving forward together. And I just want to say that for me, it's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to hear what I'm hearing. And I don't think that there's any reason, in my experience anyway, to not acknowledge these truths in a good way. It's all about being able to go forward in a good way, because until we look at what is, how do we go forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Michelle.
Hi, thank you. So I don't want to repeat what folks have said. It truly is about awareness and person's understanding. And I think it starts
Sorry.
young, and that we have school board representation here as well. I think as we move forward, it is about moving forward, but it's about moving forward safely with the knowledge and awareness of who we are and what we don't know. And I think that's the part that's most challenging, is what people don't know. And if you don't know, you don't know it. It's so hard to actually be able to acknowledge it. So it's building the foundation and being able to move the bar. And this is a long game. I hate to say it, but it truly is. It is a long game. It's generational as well. So we have to understand that we're here today, but this conversation will be an ongoing conversation as we look at the past, and we're trying to move the bar forward for our future and recognizing how long that will take. But we are here, and we're here with the intents of being able to do that and be able to support that knowledge, education, and awareness, and doing it all to support equity, equality, and inclusion within our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. And Jacob?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I'm going to share is going to come as observation of a large portion of youth in our community. And one of the biggest attractions for me to the school and continuing to stay here is the resiliency and the great kids that are here, and having comparisons to similar communities in Prescott and Gananoque and Dunrobin, where I've spent time and worked. I can attest that the youth here are much further ahead in their understanding and compassion. And by no means is it perfect, and by no means are they, 100% complicit in this. But in those easy comparisons for me to observe as a silent bystander, and hearing kids talk in the hall and how they interact with peers and the language they use and their actions of their socializations, I can say in terms of, in kids, these things are learned behaviors from parents, from grandparents, from, situational observations. I can say that this community in its youth is further ahead than similar communities in this area. We can always do more in terms of increasing their understanding. We have a whole 12 years of graduating classes out of a high school that no longer refers to itself as the Redmond, and that was a large step forward, I think, in this community. And it really, much like Angle parking, and as someone off the community observing what people can get upset about, there were people that were really upset about the changing of that identity of how our youth travel to other communities and what they're referred to as. And I think as leaders in the community and the decisions that were made, I think those are strong statements we make to young people without them even realize they're being spoken to. And I think as we continue, and maybe, you know, this committee can put forward suggestions on how we can just subtly change what they're being influenced by in their surroundings and the opportunities we afford kids, and, you know, agreeing that this is a long-term shift. And I think we're in a good starting place in that it's through the youth that we're going to see the result of this shift. And, you know, negative thoughts as we become adults, they become a lot more difficult to change. They're a lot deeper ingrained. And so I think the focus, and not 100%, but I think a lot of it has to be on what we're really portraying to these young people in these formidable years, and continuing the work that's been done, and the strong ideas and the modeling that's been done. And I think I just wanted to put a positive thing out there, and that I think there's a great groundwork to work on, and gaining some inertia, or continuing to increase the inertia of this movement that's really already started without the formation of this committee. And I think this can give it just a little push and a speed up, and expand the framework of what's already started.
Great, thanks a lot, Jacob. Janelle.
I would echo a lot of what Jacob just said of the youth. I am privileged to work with a lot of them within my storefront at Starbucks, and I am completely blown away of how they show up, and they're constantly allies. And I think, you know, we all have come together, we all have different stories. Some of us identify within specific groups, but we all are allies. So I've done a lot of work with like the Black Lives Matter movement within Starbucks. I have been fortunate enough to co-chair for the Ottawa and surrounding area and make a difference there. But I've also been fortunate enough to show up as an ally. So when I talk about diversity and inclusion within our workplace with a lot of the youth, they understand it, and they've become very active in the community around it too, so that people that identify within those groups, they don't have to be the constant voice anymore. It's the allyship that shows up constantly to really be heard. And I am just, again, blown away by the youth in this town and the next generation to see what is truly possible for Smith Falls. And I read this quote yesterday about diversity and inclusion, and trying to really see how it affects me and how it affects those around me and my peers in different areas. And one thing that really resonated with me was the sense of belonging. So we talk about diversity. We look at this platform right now. We have a lot of individuals on this council alone that they have so much diversity. And then we talk about inclusion and everybody speaking up. But I think it's a sense of belonging. So many people called Smith Falls home from before or now. And I think that's the bottom line. Like, we want to be able to call this home and feel comfortable in our home. So I can echo how proud I am of the youth, of being able to speak up, and not as allies, being able to speak up and make a difference, but just that sense of belonging. And I think that's what I want to echo for Smith Falls, that I want every nationality, every religion to be able to just feel that inclusion and feel like they can call Smith Falls home.
Wonderful. Thank you, Janelle. And Charlene.
So I'd like to just echo what everybody has said. And I agree with the youth. I think that the youth in Smith Falls have a totally new sense of inclusivity that is such a breath of fresh air, I think, for and across many different levels of discrimination and race. So yeah, I agree, both Jacob and Janelle, with you. And Janelle, I just want to comment on, I was so proud to see the coloring contest you did in your window in a town of this size. So I am also, in my introduction, I left out a number of pieces. So I'm a two-spirited woman. And Sean, thank you for mentioning Pride. I was on the first planning committee with Pride. I'm also the proud parent of a non-boundary trans child. Living in a small town, when they first came out, part of my biggest fears was, how was this going to be received in my small community that I grew up in, knowing that I didn't feel safe, for example, coming out myself when I was young. And I think that that's totally different. And I really give all of the credit to that, to the youth of this town, because I think that they have a lot to teach us. And I think that we really should be looking towards them for how inclusivity and welcoming works. For me, I would also say that it is about education. It's about having those hard conversations. It's about listening to people's experiences, and sometimes hearing that difficulty, right? And sitting in a place of uncomfortability. I think that we can become very complacent in our own attitudes. And I agree with a couple of people who have said about, generational issues in town. My parents, for example, I come from a mixed race relationship. My mom is First Nations. My dad is European descendant, both English and Irish. And there are things that would come out of my dad's mouth that, rest his soul, that it just was, right? He certainly didn't mean any ill intent. He certainly didn't mean to be harming anyway. He didn't mean to be any of those things, but it is part of the upbringing, I think. And I agree. I don't necessarily think that's synonymous to being a small community. I think sometimes, though, in a small community, many people don't have the opportunity of the experience of a larger, more diverse community. And when I say diverse, I mean diverse across all levels, right? So I think that is part of what we can do. But I think our youth, are phenomenal. And I think that we, on this committee, I think we'll have to have some hard conversations. Peter, I welcome the fact that you said, we need to, in a kind and gentle way, right? I think that makes all the difference when we come from a place of kindness and being gentle. I mean, those are my teachings as a First Nations woman, acknowledging the land that we're on, acknowledging the people that are here, and that, we have all four corners of race here. And, as part of our medicine wheel, the most important part is where those four colors meet in the middle, right? And it's where we all converge, where we can work collectively and collaboratively, I think, to make change. So education is key, listening, talking, and having those hard conversations. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Charlene. Peter.
Thank you for everything everyone said. I just want to talk about equity as opposed to equality, and just it's a more important topic to me. And then the other thing is learning and educating our youth is one thing, but then the structural racism and structures and systems that our town may or may not have in place. So as a bureaucrat, I'm interested in seeing how we can look at those, unpack some of those ways we do business, how we talk as a municipality, and ensure that we're not contributing to the problem. So the very fact that this is live and that this town said we want to have a public conversation about racism and discrimination in our community, and we've got this wonderful group of diverse people, and that it's being broadcast out to our community, is a structure and something we put into place to start saying we're going to talk about it and we're going to be open about it. We're not going to have closed. So those are the areas where I hope I can contribute. So talking about equity, and then any of the structural changes that, because we can't control federal or provincial governments, but we have some say over how our municipality operates. So I'm interested in that conversation as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. And to your point, I think there's many municipalities, I think, which, especially smaller ones, which may be reluctant to venture down this road. And I think we've seen it in up the valley. I think our Empire was an area where there was some internal conflict on the council because there was some different positions taken and some denial of maybe the realities that exist in the community. And to Peter's point, I think it's important that we have this open public forum. I mean, I think it's hard to plan for the future that we all envision if you haven't totally dealt with maybe the past as well as obviously the present. So from my perspective, I want to appreciate. Oh, sorry, Ben, I'll let you go first.
Oh, sorry. So I was listening to what Janelle and Charlene were saying, and based on their experiences on what they were observing, and that brought back to what Chris was actually saying about intersectionality. And I think we have here in this agenda something task force identity, and I think intersectionality really is, as Chris was saying, the perfect thing for us to head towards there. Like maybe we could start defining it for everyone. And yeah, so also I was like, I'm glad to hear about the youth in this town and how open they are. And even like my boss's children, my boss talks about how his children have developed these progressive attitudes all the time and how happy he is about it. And I've even noticed the open-mindedness in some of the more aged folk in the town. Like they are a lot more open-minded than say an outsider coming in would expect. An outsider coming in would expect. So it could be difficult but not impossible. So I think what Chris was saying there, the intersectionality thing, is what I really want to help her drive home. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And it looks like Chris has her hand up. She has something further to add. Chris, you're on mute again. Sorry.
Sorry, I have a visual issue, so this is why you're going to see me make the occasional mistake with Zoom and so on. And I also have issues of physical disability, so please forgive me. What I wanted to say is, in the honor of my walk, I had the opportunity to be at the final event for the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. And in actual fact, the framework has been placed in one way for us to have guidance in municipalities as well, because it addressed all levels of governance, which we are here talking about from where we come from. I also have some resources in this case, which are the United Nations Declaration for Indigenous People pocketbooks, which, if it's okay, part of what I've done in my journey has been adding to our community so that educational material would be available to everyone free. So I've worked in partnership with the library. And I just think, in the deepest of respect, I, as a settler who is white privileged, I live in poverty, I live with issues of disability, I'm female. There are a number of things where intersectionality applies across the board, and is what brings inclusion in, is being able to see, and not saying that they're affecting me in the same way in any way, but I think that that's the thing that I feel so hopeful about when we talk about the generations to come, because I believe that that's something that those of us who have grown up in other generations, when we learn more, we realize how possible it is to be more inclusive. And really the number one barrier when I've been walking over the journey of issues of disabilities in the Ontario Disabilities Act is always attitude. And it's free to change. And that's always what gives me the greatest hope. Because if I open myself to learning and I take that responsibility and I have that good heart, there is so much that can be done. So I just wanted to put that out because I just want to share with others of you. Intersectionality was taught to me by a wonderful young woman of color who I was, even though I was very woman-centered, unaware a couple of years ago. So that's why I brought that forward, because I had younger generations teach me. And so it's gone both ways. And I think that's an amazing gift. If I have to occasionally change my position, I hope you'll all forgive me. It's because of my physical issues of disability. But I just wanted to put that out there. I think it's a good thing to again be listening and to sharing experiences, because we all have them and they're all our stories, and stories are nothing to be afraid of. That's all I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Peter, your hand is up. Is it still up or is it up again? No. Okay. And from my perspective, I mean, I was born here and grew up in the 70s and 80s, and the community was much different. It was, well, not very diverse at all. I think there were still some very negative attitudes towards people of color. Probably the most common derogatory term I would have heard as a kid of guy against guy would be an anti-gay statement. Very, very common, unfortunately, in those days. And so I think our community has evolved a lot. And I agree. The kids today, I think, are where we want the whole community to be. And I look at my own kids, and I don't believe there is any negative thoughts within them towards any individual, regardless of any status in life, color, sexual orientation. No, they understand, and they are where we need our community to be. But I know there are still those deeply rooted attitudes of people that have yet to evolve to the point where we believe they need to be. And social media obviously is a area where it permeates, it creates opportunity for people to express themselves in manners that they may not even do in person, but they feel empowered to do so behind a keyboard. And that attracts further like-minded people. And of course, we see those issues in many parts of the world, especially say in the US, may not see as much here, but it is here. And for example, I mean, the council is committed to creating a town square, people place beside town hall, between town hall and library. We've closed Daniel Street. We'll be creating a great spot for a place for people. We're putting a bandstand in there thanks to a donation from Tom Folks. And it's going to be a great place to gather. And of course, some of the comments from some people are, well, it's just going to give a place for those people to hang out. And the negativity that still exists from some segments of our population. And so it's important that we find a method and a path forward that can help everyone understand. And I read a book last summer, an audio book, I should say. I listened to it. It was Rising Out of Hatred by Derek Black. And of those who haven't read it, Derek Black was the heir apparent to the KKK. He's had a radio podcast at the age of 12. He was a white supremacist. He went to a fairly liberal college in Florida, met some people who were of different color, and came to realize that they really weren't much different than him. And in the end, he realized that everything he'd been told in his life was basically a lie, and that people we were all, regardless of the color of our skin and our sexual orientation, we were all the same. And he's at the point now where he's essentially in hiding because those who had been the white supremacists who had supported him and had aligned with him very much went against him when he came out indicating that everything he had learned was wrong. So attitudes can change. And it's our responsibility to try and help sure that we can reshape the attitudes in our community that stand somewhere back in I guess the period of time before the world became what it is today. So moving on, we talked on the priority issues task force identity. So I made reference to this earlier. So the label put on this task force, of course, it's racism and discrimination. And I don't know if it speaks truly to what we stand for and what we are trying to accomplish. So I want to have a conversation based around our identity, but also on the scope of our work, and to be as inclusive and as the equity, inclusiveness, and equality. How broad do we go with that? Do we look and make sure that absolutely everyone is welcome? Is there any thought that potentially dilutes some of the maybe more profound issues? I don't want to I guess lead the conversation on this. I want to create an open forum here that I want to hear from everybody what we believe is our primary responsibility, and are we going to be more narrow focused, or do we need to be as broadly focused as possible? And Bip, you have your hand up first.
I think given our objective, given what we set out to do here, I think as broad as possible, because I mean, it is the more obvious answer, I guess. But really, it's a lot of people here have different needs, and you know, if we can address like most of them, it's in our duty, really.
Thank you.
So, if I guess if can I keep talking?
Yeah. Oh, sure, absolutely.
Okay, so I noticed Chris, Jacob, Michelle, and Charlene would be in unique positions to probably have like literature regarding regarding some of the terminology, and I was wondering if if that could be like shared in a Google Drive or something, so we can all be on the same page there.
Yeah.
And sorry, everyone, I was just going to sort of piggyback on what Bip had said about the generalization of the names of the committee, if you will. I completely agree. The more generalized it is, the broader the spectrum. However, we do at the same time need to keep it somewhat focused, so we're not trying to boil the ocean, as they say, right? So I think what may be important for us is to focus initially on a couple key points where we feel we can sort of show the greatest impact, which will therefore, or in the long run, get greater buy-in from the local community. Because without the community buy-in, it's a complete waste of time, right? So I think we need to focus on that. So Bip, as you said, generalizing it, yeah, I think that's great, and I think we do need to do that because if this is to cover racism, and we know that racism comes in every way, shape, and form, or color, shape, and form. Inclusion is kind of in a similar topic. I think that it could become quite the mountain to climb if we don't keep ourselves focused on a couple, 3, 5, 10 points or tasks, if you will.
Great point, Kaz. Thank you. Janelle.
I am agreeing on just the broad scope. I think that we know, especially in the last year, that so much has changed, and it's a constant change of position. So we've dealt with a lot of like Black Lives Matter, and then we hear issues coming up with or like Asian hate and different things there. So I think that we just know that what's going on is constantly changing, and we have to have the ability to flex within it. And that's where we will have a strong presence, because we will know we can support whatever's going on, and whatever group specifically, whoever's identifying within these groups, how to support them. And we talked a lot about education, but we need to listen to those specific groups and how we can support them. So I would say keeping it broad is important. And then again, there's a lot of community nonprofits, there's a lot of businesses, we have a lot of just talent within our team that we can use as resources. and then create partnerships. So I know that Upper Canada District School Board has a great stance on anti-racism and discrimination. So creating a partnership there, I am again blown away by Smith Falls High School itself and their presence within Upper Canada District School Board. So I would say creating a strong partnership with the high school. There's a lot of business advisory boards that we could use to make sure that there is voices in every single workplace, and creating resources for employees, because not all employers have these platforms built within their organization. So I think that it's going to be a lot of partnerships too that we can lean on to make this this task force really profound.
Great. Thank you, Janelle. Chris, I think you were next. Oh, still on mute, Chris.
Because of my disability issues, I have hard copies like the old days, so I hope you'll forgive me, but I do have enough hard copies for everyone, if that's acceptable to share if anyone's interested, especially the United Declaration of Indigenous People. The other thing as an ally that I'd like to say is I'm always learning, and one of the things that I'm now aware of is anti-racism is the term that has come to my understanding. Indigenous or, for persons of color. I think language is crucial in a good way, because even with the TRC, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, Charlene, but the TRC did say different individuals will have different ways of identifying, but Indigenous is a word that I have been guided to use. So that is what I do use. And I think the other thing that I would just like to say is, I think learning how to be a good ally and to be a supporter is by really listening and hearing, like I mentioned earlier. When I heard the word intersectionality, I had to look it up, and I think it's how inclusion is really included. From my perspective, now mind you, that is as a woman saying that, but I think it goes across the board. And it may be a way to narrow, but yet include at the same time. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Also, the other piece to this is that I really am not here for any other reason than to be a supporter and an ally and to go forward in a good way. So I just wanted to share that and thank everyone.
Thank you, Chris. Who is next? Charlene.
I'll go next. So I completely agree that I think we should keep it broad, but broad with, I think sometimes we need to have a focus, because I think that there are particular pieces that this committee will be tasked with, I think, in relation to our community and our town. But I do like, I do think that racism and discrimination itself as a title for this committee feels somewhat limiting, although I think those two words are big. I would love to see something around, inclusivity be included in there as well, right? So that I think that there is a level of positivity and a level of welcoming, and that we're not just, that we're looking at moving forward, I guess, something that's going to kind of identify those pieces. And I would love to see, the committee have a statement, right? A statement that, I heard, I'm not sure who said about the buy-in from town and different stakeholders. I think that that's really important. And I think that we have, I think there's, we'll certainly run into some roadblocks and have some challenges around buy-in, but it would be nice to have a statement for our community around being inclusive, and that we can, have posted, whether it's on our websites or in our businesses or something that tells visitors, residents, and members of this community, be direct or indirect, that we have a level of acceptance and things that just will not be accepted in our community, and that we are welcoming to all and any coming in. And I agree. I think that there's a number of different. I don't think we need to recreate the wheel, I guess is what I'm saying, right? I think that it takes some time to do some research and I think there's some great work that's been done out there. And I think that we can adopt some of those pieces at other communities or other organizations, or how people have addressed those issues. I look at, this was a few years ago, I think, when I first, and I think it was at Dairy Queen actually, that I first saw the little sign in the drive-through window about addressing, bad customers speaking poorly to staff would not be tolerated. And I thought, how wonderful is that, right? I mean, I think it's very simple. It's there. It's not necessarily in your face, but everybody is seeing it and reading it, because I mean, I don't know how often I heard of those horrific stories, for example. So there's things that I think that we can do that are just very simple and easy, that will send a message that has impact and is powerful, without, I think with little work and will create a lot of buy-in.
Great, Charlene. Thank you. Who's next? Peter.
I like Charlene's point about not recreating the wheel, and there's tools and processes that those who have gone before us, we will learn from them. And I don't know what was it the National Association of Municipalities, or which association? It's a coalition of municipalities that are out front on this, and they've got tools. When we talk about, by the way, Chris, I'd love a hard copy of what you got. And I would welcome any other material, but I wonder if they've got something maybe geared toward a smaller community who's starting out. I'm sure it's a toolkit, but I don't know that. But I don't want to spend a lot of time creating tools when we know they're out there.
Thank you. Nadine, I'm going to go to you before I go to Jacob.
Hi, I'm Nadine Bennett, the Deputy Clerk here at the Town of Smith Falls, and looking very forward to working with all of you and hearing your input and your stories. It's going to be great, and I know that Council's really excited as well. I was talking to Mayor Panko. I have a colleague in the town of Whitby, and they have launched a great program up there. They have an inclusiveness program, and they started with some of their employees. So I have reached out to my colleague to see if she'd come as a delegation to this group. She may be a starting point. When Charlene talks about sharing resources in municipal government, we share lots of resources and we never reinvent the wheel. So I will try to get her to come. She's very busy, but I'm hoping she could come and share kind of how they've launched the program that they have up there for inclusiveness. So we'll see what we can do, and I look forward to meeting all of you. And again, this is a great committee. So thank you.
Thanks, Nadine. Jacob?
I think in terms of, titling and looking at an identity, I think as we work through the mandate, I think it's going to organically come to us what the real descriptor of this is as we start to put an action plan together after we identify the barriers and the areas of opportunity. And I think to put a title or definition on it now before we start to work through some conversations of the mandate, I think it becomes limiting in itself again. So I think it's going to organically take on through the personalities involved and the, with every community being different as we look at, the experience in Whitby and how their municipal government moved, knowing that Smith Falls is its own place with its own population. And as we share experiences and delve into that, I think it's going to really take a life of its own. It's going to be exciting to watch, and I think it will fall in place as we increase our discussions and get comfortable with each other and see what's going to work.
Thank you. Michelle, I believe you had your hand up before. Oh,
I did. I didn't want to repeat things that were said. I did love Charlene's conversation about sometimes you need to be focused, and as well having a person come and chat with us, I think is really pretty important. I think Nadine brought that forward. And or to have somebody come and speak with us. I wonder, has everybody actually done sort of ICS training and done education and the background piece? Like, do we have to do any work with this task force itself? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm asking the question.
No, like municipally, we've had no formal training when it comes to racism, discrimination, equality. I think many of us have taken different courses and sessions to try and help gain a deeper understanding. But to your point, perhaps that's something that needs to be within our municipal training. Maybe it should be provincial wide as well. But don't know, at this point we have not.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, Sean. I think the approach we're taking at the health center is it's inclusive, and our board is participating as well in the knowledge, acquiring the knowledge, so that when we're having conversations, we're all talking the same language and people are understanding the roots of where we're coming from and why. And that's been so interesting for us to learn, that if people don't understand why, they don't understand how we're going to act, why we're doing education, why we need to change, what has influenced it. And our staff were actually supporting 100% of our people to do ICS training, which is a fantastic module, and it's multiple modules, but it's truly really created rich conversations with people. And our working group, they're working on their name, but it's about the work that we need to do and being able to build on it, but everybody being on a level playing field as we're having those conversations.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Chris, did you have your hand? Oh, sorry, Chris and then Nadine.
I just wanted to share that the honor I've had walking the path that I am is that there are different cultural ways of teaching that are equally as valuable. And so even though cultural sensitivity training is absolutely at the top as an ally and a supporter, and I'm grateful for what comes from where we do, I'm sorry, talking about me being a settler originally and am a settler, is I think that it has to respect that that is also true, and that hopefully we will be blessed to have the opportunity to understand that both ways of teaching of all different cultural backgrounds have equal value and importance. The other thing about the United Declarations of Indigenous People pocketbook that I have, it is literally a pocketbook. It's a basic starting point for those who want to learn. Just forgive me that I don't have other materials with me. I apologize, but because that's been my journey. And I think that for me as an ally and a supporter, I think the most important thing is to realize that the system that I come from is not the only way. And so that if there are other ways of learning through story sharing or truth telling in a circle or sharing, I think those are equally important and valuable in whatever other cultural gifts that others are bringing to the committee. I just don't want to see them left out. I think that's my big thing. So I just wanted to put that forward.
Okay, again, Chris. Nadine?
Sorry, I was just trying to get the title of the training that staff did take, but we did take an inclusive training. It was a couple of years ago now. One thing that I'd like to mention to our director, though, is, how often should we train staff? Because we get new staff. But the other thing is things change. And that's why one of you mentioned, I think it was Beth, mentioned, creating a Google Drive where we can have some of the terms and stuff so that we're all respectful of those terms and we know them, because things change, right? So it is something that I'll mention to our human resources director to see how often staff will be doing that training. But it was a great training at the time. It was a couple years ago now. And so things have evolved since then, but certainly it was well received by staff.
Thanks, Nadine. Further comments? So going back to Jacob's comment regarding let the organic grassroots development of this task force evolve. We won't worry about the name today, but in the end, we may end up coming up with something that's different than what it stands for today, even though we know that the work we will be doing will be obviously more inclusive than perhaps what the title suggests. Is that fine with everyone?
Yep.
Okay, so lots of nodding heads. Thank you. Okay, we're close to wrapping up. I'm going to ask for any further comments on how you see this evolving and items you'd like to see on the next agenda. Well, Jacob, did you have your hand up, or just?
I can speak to it. I'd like to, next when you start to maybe look at part of the mandate and begin identifying barriers and areas of opportunity that we can think of within the community. And I think that might be a great beginning of a discussion point for next meeting, and allow us to start to develop ideas towards an action plan. But until we know what those barriers and opportunities are, I think we're just, philosophizing about potential or observed things.
Thank you. Further comments?
So I agree with Jacob about the identifying the barriers and areas of opportunity. So is there any way we could ask people, like just have a like a question box or whatever the online equivalent is?
We do have a mechanism called Speak Up Smith Falls. It is basically a survey tool that we have on the town website. And that's something we can absolutely utilize and circulate. I'd like to gain as much feedback, as broad and as deep of feedback as possible. And probably in a forum where people are comfortable knowing that their comments are confidential. In many cases, people may not feel the same freedom to speak up if they haven't attached their name to their comments. So that's something that absolutely we can develop. And what I would suggest probably is that staff would work on the content, and then we would review that at the next meeting to refine it to the point where we would then publish it and circulate it and garner as much feedback as we possibly can. Any further, Bip?
No.
Thank you. Janelle.
I definitely see the importance of storytelling. So learning from what people's true experiences are. There's a lot that I heard today that, again, I didn't even know was going on. So the importance of confronting it face on. And then just like you just said, Sean, we call them courageous conversations in our workplace, but being able to have listening sessions where people, can specifically identify to different storytelling situations. Because if we don't listen, we will not know what we need to change within our community. and then having a proactive approach. So there are a lot of Facebook groups even I've seen for Ottawa Valley. And we know that there's different things going on in other municipalities around us. So whether it is Perth, whether it is Arnprior, Pembroke, Petawawa, like there is so much going on. So I think we also need to stay tapped into what's going on around us so that we can make sure we show up the way we want to.
Great, thank you, Janelle. Chris.
Because my background as well has been to fight for the Ontario Disabilities Act, and because I live with issues of invisible disability, we want to make sure that we just don't rely on online. We could send out postcards and have it as an anonymous way to bring back feedback, because we want, in my opinion, include persons who are living with varieties of disabilities, and some of those do not allow access for a variety of reasons to the internet or to the websites. And I think that's my biggest thing I'd like to offer is, please, let's not forget. We are at the moment very fortunate that we can all come together this way, but I will share with you openly and honestly, this is actually a gift that I'm able to join you like this with our library closed. Normally, I would not necessarily be able to do that. And so in order to make sure we don't leave anyone behind, the postcards or the recent cards that were mailed out about, the phase 2, it's a similar plan that we could have. And hopefully we'll also include more than just one language. Thanks.
Good feedback, Chris. Thank you. Peter, did you have your hand up earlier?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think we may need to explore further how we garner feedback, and the one challenge, of course, well, more than one challenge, but the online, simply asking people to answer questions online will gather feedback, but it's not going to be as effective, obviously, as a dialogue. And so we may want to get to the point when we invite the members of our community to potentially come to the task force if they're willing to share their stories and share their thoughts and share their vision for our community in a manner which would be more comprehensive than simply asking questions in an online forum or through a postcard, to Chris's point. Okay. Any further comments before? Oh, sorry. Was that Kaz? No, Peter? Oh, Peter, yeah.
Just to say that hopefully all of you completed your census, and within the next few months, we'll start, maybe by the end of this mandate, we'll actually have a better picture, at least through the census data, of what Smith Falls looks like. I suspect, although we're changing, we're not very different than the rest of Ontario. So I know we'd like to think we're all so unique here. We're probably made up of a lot of small towns. So I'm interested in seeing the census data, but it'll probably be 6 months. We'll get some high level data maybe in 4 or 5 months, and then 6 months. But that will really help me just to take a look and see, because we have these perceptions and we have ideas about how things are changing. I don't want to be driven by data, but the data would be also really helpful.
Absolutely, because what we have right now is quite dated.
Dated, yeah.
Good to see the differences, right? Okay. Don't see any further hands, any further closing comments before we wrap up. Bip, I see you. Did you?
No, I'm
okay.
Good.
Okay. So I'd like to thank everyone today for your participation, for your willingness to come forward, to speak up on behalf of everyone in our community, especially those who may not have the opportunity to express themselves in the manner that we like to see and they would like to see. I'm excited we've got this journey started. I'm very pleased with the people who are part of this group and are going to be on this journey with us. And frankly, I knew some of you to some capacity before, and your opening comments helped me understand that there's a lot more about you that I